Have you ever walked into a room and immediately felt the energy before a single word was spoken? Have you ever cried over a song you couldn't explain, or felt a heaviness in your chest that wasn't even yours? Have you ever wondered why you sense things so deeply, why others call you too emotional, or why you can't seem to disconnect from what people are really feeling, even when they pretend everything is fine? If you were born in February, this is not random. It's not weakness. It's not oversensitivity. It's your soul's blueprint. Carl Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." People born in February are that reaction. They are emotional alchemists. They walk into the lives of others, and without even trying, trigger healing, discomfort, because the February soul was born under the archetype of the sacred mirror. You reflect what others are afraid to feel. You absorb what others are unwilling to process. And you do it without words, without needing to analyze. Your energy speaks first. But let's be honest, being this kind of soul is exhausting. They seek your light but resent your depth. They're drawn to your calm, your kindness, your understanding. But they disappear when it's your turn to ask for the same. Why? Because the sacred mirror forces people to see themselves. And not everyone is ready for that. You've likely been misunderstood your whole life. Parents said you were too sensitive. Friends loved you when you listened, but vanished when you needed to be heard. Sound familiar? That's because you were born with high emotional frequency. You don't just think, you feel. You don't just process information, you absorb energy. And that makes you different. But it also makes you powerful. In Jungian psychology, there's a concept called the anima, the feminine soul image within the unconscious. Even in men, this inner world is soft, sensitive, intuitive, and receptive. For those born in February, the anima is dominant. You were born to hold space, to soften harsh realities, to walk between the spiritual and the emotional with grace. But here's the twist: because you feel so much, and because the world doesn't validate that sensitivity, you internalize the belief that there's something wrong with you. That belief becomes shame, and shame becomes silence, and silence becomes a mask. And so, many February-born souls live disconnected from their own power, thinking their depth is a burden, when in truth, it is their gift. But let me tell you what no one told you growing up. You weren't made to fit. You were made to heal, not by fixing others, but by being yourself so fully that others finally feel safe to be real. Your presence heals, not because you solve people's problems, but because you don't run from emotion, because you sit in silence with those who suffer, because you feel what others are afraid to name, because you speak gently, but carry truth like thunder. That's who you are, and it's time you stop apologizing for it. You were born in February for a reason. It's the shortest, quietest, most inward month. It's a time between winter's death and spring's rebirth. It's not loud, but it's sacred. It asks for reflection. It invites stillness. It awakens the soul. And that's exactly what you do. You awaken souls. But maybe no one's ever told you that. Maybe you've spent years believing your empathy is a curse. Maybe you've silenced yourself to keep the peace. Maybe you've dimmed your light just to stay close to people who couldn't handle your truth. But now, something inside you is waking up. It's not anger. It's memory. It's recognition. It's your soul whispering, "I was born to reflect what the world refuses to look at." If this spoke to your soul, if you felt every word in your body, then this is your moment. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment saying, "I was born in February and I feel everything." This isn't just a video series. It's a soul awakening, and it starts with you. Stay with me, because in the next part, we go even deeper into the unconscious gifts you didn't even know you had. People born in February are often told they're too soft for this world. But the truth is, this world has become too numb to feel. You weren't made to be hard. You weren't born to shut down, shut up, or shut off. You were made to stay open, even when it hurts. And that's the paradox of your soul. The world tries to protect you by telling you to become less of who you are. But your power only comes alive when you become more of who you are. Carl Jung believed that each human being carries not just a personal unconscious, but a connection to a collective unconscious. A deep well of symbols, wounds, desires, and patterns shared by all humanity. Most people ignore it, but February-born souls are tuned into it. You feel what's not being said. You carry emotions that aren't yours. You cry without knowing why. You're affected by world events more than others. And when people hurt you, your first instinct isn't to fight. It's to understand them. That's because you are a bridge between the seen and unseen. You are what Jung called a vessel of feeling. But when you're not taught how to carry that vessel with awareness, you begin to confuse other people's emotions with your own. You lose track of where they end, and you begin. And suddenly, you become a sponge for pain. This is where your suffering begins. Not because you re-broken, but because you were never shown how to protect your boundaries energetically. No one told you that sensitivity isn't a flaw. It's a technology. It's intuition. But without self-awareness, it turns inward and becomes anxiety, exhaustion, chronic guilt, emotional overwhelm. Feeling wrong for simply being you, start to question your instincts. You hide your tears. You make yourself smaller. And worst of all, you betray your own feelings, just to stay connected. But Jung taught something radically liberating. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. You were not born to carry everyone's wounds. You were born to hold space for them, but only after holding space for yourself. That's where your journey turns. It's no longer about being a mirror for others. It's about becoming a mirror for your own soul. Ask yourself, what emotions have I silenced to stay accepted? Where have I confused loyalty with When did I decide that my softness made me weak? And more importantly, what would my life feel like if I embraced every part of who I am? Without shame. These are not just questions, they're keys. They unlock a version of you that has been waiting quietly beneath the pain. A version that doesn't need to harden to survive. A version that feels deeply and stays rooted. A version that listens to intuition before pressure. A version that no longer needs to shrink just to be safe. This is the February's soul and transformation. No longer just an emotional sponge, but an intuitive healer. A boundary setter, a truth speaker, a sacred mirror that reflects clarity, not just pain. You don't need to shut off to feel powerful. You don't need to numb yourself to be taken seriously. You don't need to toughen up. To belong, you only need to become conscious of who you already are. That's what Jung meant when he said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. The feelings you carry are not your enemy. They are your superpower. But only when you learn to discern what's yours, what's not, and what it's finally time to release. So maybe today is not about changing who you are. Maybe it's about remembering. Remembering that your depth is your design, that your emotions are messengers, that your tenderness is strength in disguise, that your sensitivity is sacred. The world doesn't need more hard people. It needs more whole ones. And you, born in February, were always meant to be whole. There comes a moment in every February-born soul's journey where they realize empathy is not their weakness. It's their origin point. You weren't born just to feel. You were born to transform what you feel. Into healing, into truth, into leadership. That's where your real journey begins. Not in the weight of what others feel, but in your capacity to move energy with presence. Most people don't know this, but empathy, at its highest level, becomes spiritual leadership. Carl Jung once said, the healer's path begins in the wound. And you, February soul, have walked through wounds most people can't even name. You've felt invisible. You've questioned your value. You've begged for space in a world that rewards detachment and punishes depth. And yet, here you are, still feeling, still loving, still holding space. Not because you're fragile, but because your soul is indestructible. You've begun to notice something strange, haven't you? That the more honest you are about your emotions, the more people are drawn to you. That the more vulnerable you become, the safer others feel around you. That the moment you stop hiding behind false strength, your true power starts to show. That's not a coincidence. That's resonance. Because the world is starving for realness. And your presence, when rooted in truth, becomes a beacon for others to drop the mask. This is what Jung meant by individuation. Becoming so whole within yourself that you no longer need to absorb others to stay connected. You simply stand in your truth, and the right connections come to you. You're no longer the emotional sponge. You are the emotional anchor. You no longer try to save everyone. You start holding people capable. You no longer betray your needs to keep the peace. You start speaking gently, but firmly. With boundaries, with clarity, with presence. That is what true emotional leadership looks like. And you, born in February, were born for it. But here's the part no one tells you. To step into this version of yourself, you'll have to let go of the story that kept you safe. The story that says, "I'm too sensitive. I'm a burden. If I show emotion, I'll be rejected." That story was never true. It was just a strategy. One, you learned to survive a world that didn't yet understand your soul. But you're not surviving anymore. You're awakening. And the awakened empath is unstoppable. You begin to realize that your energy, your actual frequency, affects rooms, conversations, timelines. You're not here to just feel the world. You're here to reshape it, not through force, not through control, but through your ability to stay deeply present. You become the mirror. But now, you choose when and how to reflect. You don't absorb everything. You discern. You don't abandon yourself to belong. You lead with sensitivity. And that is your power. You become what Jung described as the wounded healer fully realized. Not someone who hides the pain, but someone who transforms it. You're not afraid to cry anymore. You're not ashamed to be quiet. You don't apologize for your stillness. You know now that your presence is medicine, and not everyone will be ready for it. And that's okay. You're not here for everyone. You're here for the ones ready to feel, ready to evolve, ready to wake up. Let that sink in. You don't need to be hard to be respected. You don't need to dim your light for others to shine. You only need to stay rooted in your sensitivity, to protect your energy, and to keep choosing yourself. Even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. Because your legacy won't be measured by how many people liked you. It will be measured by how many people felt safe enough to be themselves around you. That's real leadership. And that's what you were born for. Keyword: I lead with sensitivity. If you've been waiting your whole life to hear this. If something finally clicked inside you, if you're done hiding and ready to lead with sensitivity, drop a comment below saying, "I lead with sensitivity." Because that sentence is not just a statement. It's a declaration, a vibration. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to remember their softness is sacred. And don't stop here. The next part will show you how to protect your light. Let us be honest, being sensitive in this world can feel like walking through fire with your skin exposed. It's not that you're weak, it's that you're open. You feel things others ignore. You notice shifts others pretend not to. You hear what's not being said. And for most of your life, your response has been one of two things: shrink and absorb, or harden and disconnect. But what if I told you there's a third way, a way that honors your soul, protects your light, and keeps your heart open, without letting the world drain you dry? Carl Jung often spoke about the importance of the self as the center of the psyche, not the ego. The ego reacts, the self observes. And the more you awaken, the more you move from reaction to alignment. That's what boundaries are. Not rejection, not emotional walls, but spiritual filters. They are the gates through which your truth moves freely, and through which energy must be invited, not assumed. For the February-born empath, boundaries are not optional. They are essential. Because without them, you disappear into everyone else's stories. You become the caretaker, the peacekeeper, the emotional dumpster, the one who listens but is never heard. And deep inside, resentment begins to grow, not because you don't love people, but because you're finally realizing you haven't been loving yourself. So here's what you need to remember. Boundaries are not selfish. They are sacred. They say, I can love you and still say no. I can support you, but I won't abandon myself to do it. I can witness your pain, but I am not your solution. This is spiritual maturity. This is how the sacred mirror evolves, not by reflecting everything endlessly, but by choosing what deserves reflection and what must be released. You start noticing where your energy leaks. The conversation that drains you, the person who only calls when they need something. The habit of saying yes before you check in with your body. And instead of numbing, you pause, you breathe, you choose differently. Not out of guilt, but out of clarity. This is where your life begins to change. Because when you protect your energy, you amplify your presence. When you say no with love, you make space for a bigger yes. You discover how much more powerful your presence becomes when it's intentional. This is what the conscious empath looks like. Rooted, clear, kind, but firm, open, but discerning. And most of all, deeply, unapologetically themselves. Here, a truth you may have needed to hear years ago. You Dantio. Everyone access to you. Not everyone deserves your story. Not everyone can hold your frequency. Not everyone is meant to walk beside you. And that's not judgment, it's alignment. You were born in February. A sacred month, a reflective month, a month where silence is holy and energy speaks louder than noise. You don't need to be loud to be felt. You only need to be real. Start asking yourself, what does my body feel when I'm around this person? What version of me shows up when I say yes to fast? Is this connection reciprocal, or is it just convenient for them? These are not selfish questions. They're sacred check-ins, because if your energy is your medicine, then your boundaries are the bottle that keeps it safe. You don't protect your light by dimming it. The February soul was born to feel, but also to discern. Not every pain is yours to carry. Not every cry is yours to answer. Not every connection is yours to keep. And when you finally learn this, not only do you reclaim your power, you reclaim your peace. There's something you've probably always known, even before you had the words, even before you could explain it. You've known that you're not like most people. You've known that you feel differently, see differently, connect differently, suffer differently too. But you've also known, deep in your bones, that your soul came here for something more. Not more noise, not more validation, not more success in the world's terms, but something deeper, more meaningful, more sacred. That's the truth you've been circling your entire life. Your sensitivity isn't an accident. It's an assignment. You're born with a nervous system attuned to the subtle, a heart wide enough to hold contradictions, and a presence that unsettles and soothes. At the same time, you were born in February, the month between death and life. The pause before the bloom. The space where the soul wakes up, and that's exactly what you're here to do for the world. You are the pause that makes others notice what they've been ignoring. You are the silence that makes them hear themselves again. You are the mirror that reflects what they're ready to remember. Carl Jung believed that when a person awakens to their true self, not the persona, not the role, not the mask, they become a force of transformation in the collective, not by preaching, not by fixing, but by simply being fully who they are. That's your work now. To stop dimming, to stop apologizing, to stop performing strength you don't feel, and instead, to walk in softness, to speak from truth, to live as if your energy is sacred, because it is. Think of your life not as a task, but as a frequency. Every time you honor your intuition over logic, every time you rest when others are rushing, every time you name an emotion instead of burying it, you're sending out ripples. Ripples that give others permission to do the same. Ripples that create a new template for being human. Ripples that heal without force. That's the real legacy of a February soul. It's about how present you are. It's not about how many people follow you. It's about how many feel safe around you. It's not about avoiding pain. It's about transmuting it into wisdom. You've made it this far for a reason. You've been through everything you've been through. Not to become bitter, but to become clear. Not to shut down, but to open in a way that the world has forgotten how to. You are not here to fix others. You are here to remember yourself. And in doing so, you'll remind the world what wholeness looks like. So now, as we close this journey, here's what I want you to carry with you. Your feelings are valid. Your boundaries are holy. Your presence is medicine. Your soul is sacred. Let the world speed up. You move with intent. Let others seek to impress. You seek to impress. Let others try to be perfect. Because the world is not changed by those who fit in. It's changed by those who show up fully. And you, born in February, were born to show up with soul. Keyword, my soul is sacred. If this journey made you feel seen, not just as a person, but as a soul, if you're done hiding your softness, if you're ready to own your power as an empath, a mirror, and a guide, leave a comment below saying, my soul is sacred. Let that be your declaration, your protection, your remembrance. Like this video, subscribe to continue this archetypal journey. 1 month at a time. And if someone you love was born in February, share this with them. They deserve to know how powerful they truly are.